Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Friday, 30th of April, if you're in Canada, you're probably enjoying filing your tax returns because today is the deadline. My name is Bashir Fancy. I'm the founder and CEO at BIZTEC Business and Technology Professional Association Canada. And you'll recognize my colleague, friend. We've had many sessions on the issue we're going to talk about today. Nick Brown, we know we both hail from Visa, and you already know his background, know mine, so we won't take you there. Probably some of it will come out in the discussion. Now, recently, you saw on LinkedIn, and there were a lot of comments, good ones, because Nick put together a little piece on the payments. One of the concerns for everybody, which we're going to talk about today, is the involvement of the Facebooks and all the other, social media platform who are getting into the payment side of the business. I maintained for a long time that the banks, in most part, have been asleep, and these guys have moved on unchecked. I don't even see the regulatory thing. So why don't we start by letting Nick recap what he had written, what was that about, and then we'll get into the discussion to talk about what we think is going on. And so why don't you recap that article? There was obviously good reason to put that together, and people who had followed some of the chats we had done would know we were talking about this for a while. So go for it, Nick. Nick, pleasure to have you this morning. Go for it.
Oh, thank you, Bashir. Yeah, I'm Nick Brown. I'm a technical expert in the payment rails, the payment infrastructure world, and founder of Clear Purchase. And Bashir and I have been talking for a while about the threat of global mobile wallets. And like, for example, Alipay, WeChat Pay, Facebook, with their WhatsApp payments, Google as well is one of them. Amazon is doing one as well. And we've been talking about the threat of those global mobile wallets to the payment industry globally. What's interesting, what happened recently is I took another big step back and I said, well, hang on a sec, I'm a geek, I'm a technical guy, so quite often I miss the bigger picture. I took a step back and said, well, look, these guys are not just affecting the payment industry globally, it actually affects everything. And the more I thought about it, the more worried I am. I mean, I'm a science fiction guy. A lot of science fiction movies involve hundreds of years in the future. Everything is now controlled by business, corporations. And they've replaced governments, they've replaced countries, and that's a scary proposition. Now, of course, that's just fiction. But we think about those things. What would it take to get there? And I looked at the big tech, and big tech, what most people in this country anyway are not realizing is that big tech is venturing into mobile payments now. And that's been the gist of our conversations, is warning the payment industry and the banking industry that this is coming and we should be prepared for it. What I realized was these guys are, they're looking for power. They're looking to control different industries, and they're entering one industry after another after another. And I was looking and saying, if they get their hands on all payment processing, which is realistic if we don't do something to stop them, if they get control over all payment processing, they'll have unlimited power at that point. They could enter a new industry and they just shut off all the competitors, because you can't compete if you can't get paid for anything. And that scared the bejeebers out of me. I'm using a nice PG word there. That really scared it scared me, because I could see that then what happens. And that is really worrying. And that was the gist of the story, was it's not about payments anymore. Payments is in a way, it's the golden ticket for big tech. But the story is not payments. The story is technology. The story is the power of these big tech companies. And there have been so many stories about how we're going to be able to regulate them. The New York Times came out with an article, and I referenced that in mine. There's a lot of talk now about, can we even regulate big tech? Has it got so big that we can not even do that anymore? Or what can we do? And those are really good conversations. But that's really where that's where the story came from, is that I was looking at a bigger picture and a longer term horizon. So most companies are looking a year ahead or a couple of years ahead. This is maybe 5 to 10 years before it gets to these shores. If we don't do something soon, in the next couple of years at the most, then it's inevitable, because we're going to be the last ones that are going to see this. And by the time it gets to us, it's going to be too late.
So Nick, this is very well, you've summarized the article, and we've talked about this a few times, and you're absolutely right. And there are 2, 3 things. You said something very interesting. We're going to start there. You said some of the companies look at 1 and 2 years out. Actually, I think they look at 2 months out, and they look at the shareholder, if they do, because it's always about the shareholder value. It's about the next quarter, the results they report, the dividends that they give out, and that's the only thing that they worry about.
Yeah, I do want to jump in though and say, they don't know what to look for, because this is not their industry. This is our industry. This is why we're doing this, is we are waving the red flags and saying, you need to pay attention to this, because even though it's not your industry, it's going to affect it. And so that's the purpose, is to make people aware that this is coming, so that they can make the right decisions for them.
So this is a very good point. And what Nick said is literally on the tip of my tongue, which is that you can't, you can't decouple payments from anything. Everything in life today revolves around money. So when you look at payments, it is part and parcel of everything and anything you do. Nobody's going to deliver me goods that I buy from Amazon or whoever unless it's paid. I will not work if I don't get paid.
Yeah, in a way, it's the grease that makes everything else work smoothly.
Exactly, and yet we're dealing with separately, and
yes.
I do not understand that. The other part you said, which is critical here, is that the reason I mentioned the quarterly reports is that Chinese and the other guys who really moved to the top, it's the fact that Americans haven't realized that we're not going to worry about that, or many other countries have not realized and do not pay attention, is they work on a 25-year planning. Okay, they're not short-term thinkers, and they've been working on this long-term. We can't even handle a small thing properly. We have messed ourselves up with the coronavirus and what has happened with vaccines and not happened. Shows you that our planning is poor. Here's another very critical subject that we have not really paid attention to, exactly as you said, that payments is something else. No, it's not. It's tied into everything, because you can't do good things. You don't have the money. And when somebody else is controlling the money and they're controlling its technology, for that to happen, which is exactly what you said,
yeah,
they can influence the outcomes, and they are already starting to do that. As today, when you see Apple get sued by EU this morning for antitrust, right? Because of whatever Spotify. What is it all about? It's all about the fact that there's money getting charged, and Apple charges 30%. Now, Apple's not the worst of the lot, because we know that the other guys, and especially Facebook, can take that award for being the best on the wrong side of the fence. But the truth is, we don't want to put people up on pedestal because they're a little better than this guy. Oh, Trump was so bad, so this guy is better, so he's fantastic. No, he's not. Judge them by a standard that you have, right? And then we measure up, and we have stopped doing that. We've stopped doing that. So one of the things why they need to take care of these payments. So here's my next thing, and you talked about Africa. We've talked about this many times. If they control the big tech, because it's at the end of the day technology that uh, impacts payments or executes payments. You are in a third world country, and I don't know how. I don't even like to use that term these days. But you are in Africa, you're in Asia Pacific region, wherever you are, and you don't control this, right? You will be bypassed by these big giants because they'll control your economy, they'll control literally everything, how you think. They're able to manipulate right now with their algorithms how people think. We already know that they've impacted elections, whatever. So on the payment side of the things, and we've seen the example we discussed about WhatsApp, and was it 120 million registration of
WhatsApp, they've just been approved in Brazil.
right.
And that surprised me. They've just been approved to go live in Brazil with WhatsApp Pay, which is Facebook. And you have a mobile wallet in Brazil. I'm guessing on the numbers here, but like after, let's say, 5 years, they have 3 million customers. That's really impressive. WhatsApp moves in, overnight, they have 120 million. How are you going to compete with that?
Correct.
You can't.
So the banks cannot survive. If this continues, they bypass the banks. And really, if I can affect, now, you know, and I know that they want to get involved, not just in this. I'm using the word, we're not using the word credit card, we're using the word payments, whether it's debit, credit, or any other settlement. Who's to say that you buy stocks, shares, homes, that cannot be affected through this type of payment mechanism? The answer is yes, it can be. It is already being done. And so that brings up a question. If you are now in Brazil, did they not mortgage their future by doing this?
Yes. I mean, the original plan, and presumably they still think that that's the case, is that they're like WhatsApp Pay, you can use a debit card. And they don't control it. The account is not held by Facebook. But that's the Trojan horse. You let them in, you can do payments. Then you say, well, okay, what's the next thing? Well, look, only 10% of our customers actually qualify for a debit card. Let's allow us to give the other 80% an actual mobile wallet account.
Right.
Well, you can't say no to it. You've got to let them in. And then, of course, now Facebook doesn't need Visa anymore because they never wanted them in the first place.
Correct.
Because that was just a means of getting in the door. They want to control, they want to actually make the money out of the account, and they want to control the customer. The customer of Facebook is not the person. The person is the product.
Exactly.
Me and you, we are Facebook's product that are sold to advertisers.
100%. And
people,
go ahead.
Yeah. And it's like when you change your thinking and you look at it that way, you go, well, hang on a sec, what does a company do? They try and get as much out of their customers as possible by offering more products as possible. Not just number, but more parts of a product can be sold to the customer. So their vested interest is basically controlling as much of our lives as is possible.
Correct.
Because we are the product that they're selling.
And effectively, they control the governments too.
Well, they're bigger than the governments.
They're bigger than the government. Absolutely correct. Is WhatsApp, Facebook, really Facebook?
Yeah.
Are they not giving a new meaning to the word trust account we used to have in a bank? Because you had a trust account. I've seen this nonsense with the airline recently, where the airline took in a lot of funds because of coronavirus. People cancel the trip, airline canceled because they didn't fly. They now go with a handout to the government saying, I can't give this guy a refund. Hang on. What the heck are you talking about? You do not have revenue till the guy has actually flown. That is when you book the revenues. Those are the accounting rules.
Yeah, they don't follow them.
Say, explain to me, how did the money suddenly disappear? Those are the rules. That's the way I got trained. So
well, yeah, and you wrote half of the rules.
yes, so I'm saying, I'm saying, what the heck happened here?
Yeah.
So they went to the government saying, we can't give a refund. We need no trust account cannot be touched.
Yeah.
But what they've just done is because you take 80-90% of the unbanked and whatever, the money comes into to Facebook, WhatsApp, you move it digitally somewhere else. Where's the bank account? Under what rules apply?
And that's the thing. So long as it was a debit card in WhatsApp, then the money's sitting in a bank somewhere. For
Correct.
those, when it's not a debit card, Facebook has it. Now, they're not supposed to spend it, and probably they won't because they're not in the industry of lending. That's really where most money in banks goes. It gets lent out to someone else. That's how they make their money. Facebook's not in that industry. So they might not just go and spend it. But the reality, though, is Facebook has it.
But you don't
That's
have to spend it.
Huge power. Facebook just sits on it.
Correct. But you don't have to spend it. When banks, like in any country, as they do, have a certain amount of cash deposits, they're able to lend money like that, right? The equation is quite ridiculous.
Supposedly 10 to 1.
Well, they can, like 20 to 1 because it was 5% to $100, right?
Okay,
but
yeah, now maybe.
There are already pressures to remove that 5% too, right? So we don't know where the heck is going to go, but effectively, does it really matter? Because you don't have that money. It's sitting with Facebook, WhatsApp, Facebook.
Yeah.
And they said to the government, I want you to do this. If you don't do that, guess what? You don't have to worry about your foreign transactions because the Facebook's taking care of it, number one. What money laundering are you going to control?
Yeah.
Unless you're only talking about it in name. Because
how are you going to get Facebook to give you the data?
They will never give you the data. That's the data they're using.
Exactly.
Right. So
that's their bread and butter is your data.
So here's my question. Park regulators, and I would like to know what you think about it, then I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah.
You've got regulator on one side and there's banks on the other. Are they not aware that this is where it's headed?
Well, the easy answer is, with very few exceptions, no.
Correct.
They aren't. And those few people that do are getting drowned out by those that don't.
Correct. They're saying these guys are just trying to create trouble. They're conspiracy theory people, whatever the heck it may be.
Yeah.
But they don't want to look at the fact that this is going to kill you. In fact, we are in a credit society. And the reason why payments is a broader issue there, because whatever numbers you want to believe, but the truth is that they've admitted that 35% of the US monetary supply, 35% was printed in the last 10 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people actually are claiming it's less, it's 4 or 5 months, but regardless, stick at that. It's not just the 1.9 trillion and 2 trillion for the tax refund that was used by the corporate world to buy their own stock back and whatever. The 1.9 trillion that supposedly is gone to the people, there is
10% or something went to it, wasn't it?
Correct. 2.2 trillion. Now, yesterday, he's asked for $4 trillion. Want to build the bridges and roads. And I'm saying, is that how we need to do things? Would we not be looking forward to turn around and say, in the new world, with the electronic cars, and you won't need a car because the technology will be there where you ordering a thing and paying for it online, and the car comes and picks you up and drops you, and you don't need a car and those expensive insurance.
You're doing less commuting.
Correct.
Because people are working at home.
Absolutely correct.
A lot of jobs are anyway.
So now, does it not require a planning of smart cities? Not the smart cities the way they have been talking about. Smart cities where you live there, the schools are there, the shopping is there, and the technology is allowing you to do so. What type of roads and traffic do you need, right?
Yeah.
You need transport. Like if you go to China and Shanghai, And I did it a few times. When you go to the airport, it's like a bullet train. It'll
Yeah, I
get
know.
you there in next number of minutes. I took a bullet train in
Oh,
few places in China, and I'm saying,
you
just like
think?
I've done on Japan. And I'm saying, it's
so, so,
unreal.
so just to interrupt, I live in California. We've been building apparently this bullet train effectively from LA to San Francisco. I don't know if it's ever going to be finished. They haven't even planned. They've built a part of it, but neither end of it is in LA or San Francisco. It's like, is it ever going to get there? I don't think they've even got the permission to get into San Francisco yet.
Yeah,
And this has been going on for 10 years, 15 years. It's
correct.
like, what is going on? This is like, what's happened to this country? It's almost like it needs a shake up just to wake everyone up and go, you know what? There's a lot of potential to this country. Why are we wasting it?
We'll wait for China to develop, then we'll let them sell it.
Maybe they'll build it for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is it sounds ridiculous. Toronto, Montreal train takes 5 hours in there, build downtown. We can have a high-speed train. Now, if you look at UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've done it many times when I used to work in London and did the audits and stuff, whatever, in north of England, and have family all over. But you could take the express train from Manchester and literally be there in an hour and a half.
Well, that was it. My hometown is Edinburgh. There was a 125. It was what it was called because that was the speed it would go, 125 miles an hour.
Correct.
From Edinburgh to London in 4 hours.
Yeah, correct.
And with several stops, only a few, but with several stops in between. And that changed the country in a way, changed Edinburgh anyway, because before that it would take, I don't know, 8 hours to get up to Edinburgh from London. All of a sudden it was really quick, and it was like, that was impressive. And that was what, 50 years ago?
Yeah,
that was done.
They continue to improve things.
Yeah.
Deregulation didn't help them because you then had Virgin train and this train and that train, and they were worried about their own profitability. There are some industries that, and payment is one of them, where they would look and saying, well, the government doesn't need to own it, but they can set the regulations, they can enable where they could do things, and energy is another one. These are critical infrastructure things, as we are seeing with vaccines and the disaster we're seeing in one country especially, but it's all over though.
So I do agree. I do agree with you on that. I get asked the question was like, well, sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say planning. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I get asked the question. It was like, well, aren't you basically, if the issue is only a few companies control payments, aren't you suggesting that anyway? And my answer to that is, well, it was a really good question. My answer to that is, well, yes, but they are companies that cannot go beyond their bounds. Visa does transaction processing. If it were to venture into owning the account, they're now competing against their customers. They'll never be allowed to do that. So by breaking it up into smaller pieces that can't intrude into their customers' business, it forces them to play as independent roles that are not threatening to their customer base. Because the Visa's customer base is the banks and the mobile money and all the other companies that have accounts for people. Visa doesn't know who anyone is. They don't control the account. They don't.
It's changing.
Well, Visa's offering more services, or they're offering white label, but it's not under their name.
It's more than that. When they bought Yellow Paper, a company that I was in fact involved with, helping them on not just technology network, many different areas. And then if you look at the deal they made with M-Pesa, now they know who it is. And it is mobile wallets, because they've realized, because they had two choices. When they were owned by the banks, Visa could not move left or right, and that would be true of MasterCard too. They're not owned by banks, but the banks have confused themselves that they don't own Visa, that they need to actually work with them to say, where are we going? Where is the world going? And what has happened is that is this thing that we grow. See, when you look at all you're looking at is your shareholder value and not the stakeholder, which is all the people you refer to.
Yeah.
Then you are ignoring everybody else and you're only looking at the dividends that are paid out. Then this is what happens.
If you only look at the shareholder, you don't pay attention to your customer, and then you'll eventually lose them.
Absolutely. So what has happened is Visa has to do it for its own survival because it cannot rely on the banks.
They're actually being leaders in this industry, which is there are very few.
Correct. Absolutely 100%. So they are saying, we can't rely on this guy. So they've started cutting a path already big time into the digital payments because remember, their lawsuit here in Canada on the interchange, and I haven't been involved in that before, I can tell you. This is crazy because the truth is Visa doesn't make that interchange. It is the banks acquiring, issuing banks. So they can bypass and saying, you know what, if I've got a customer and they're paying a transaction fee like we get paid by the banks, and there are some other nominal fees that they're getting here, there, and the other, a merchant is not going to pay the 2% and whatever, right? You don't have to have the card and the fraud that's happening now, and I can keep approving whatever, and there's a problem, I charge it, throw it back to the merchant, right? Because somebody will pay. That cost, whether you call inefficiency cost, incompetency cost, fraud cost, and the cost of having so many middle people involved is now, but Facebook and WhatsApp and all these guys are doing it already. Apple is doing it, right? You got Alipay from China, they're doing it too, right? They're saying, never mind, my customer, you deal with me directly, I'll supply you the goods, right?
Well, and yes. And most people don't realize, everyone says, well, these high transaction costs, they blame Visa and MasterCard. It's got nothing to do with them.
Nothing to do
with
the
banks that get the money.
It's the banks.
The Visa and MasterCard get very, very surprisingly little commission from each transaction. But you did say something very relevant, which goes back to something you said at the beginning, which was payments is not its own industry. It's the glue that connects everything else together.
Right.
And so and this is part of the gist of what we talked about before, and it's even more important with this conversation I presented now, is that payments has to be integrated with everything. If we don't, you get companies like Alipay and Facebook that can integrate payments into all their other services. How are we going to compete with that if you don't have payments integrated with yours? I mean, that is incredibly difficult. It's like you can't just offer transfers.
Correct.
Because Facebook and Alipay and all the others, they'll do that as well, and they've also got something else. They've already integrated it into everything. We have to find a way of offering something better than that. And that's why I come back to purchases, and purchases don't really mean anything unless you have a purchase guarantee and dispute resolution. Now we've got something that is, like Facebook and Alipay have no clue what's involved in that, because it's you and I do, because that's been our bread and butter for so long.
Spent lifetime in that.
It is complex. And they're charging ahead with the basics, which is a smart move. Go with the basics, get everyone using it. Then we can start thinking about what next. But the moment you get, and this is the message that I've been giving for developing countries, is the moment you get remote purchases through your phone, then you have to have a guarantee on it, because what happens if you get an empty box delivered to you? You've got to have a mechanism to raise that dispute. So long as the transactions are face-to-face, it doesn't matter. You just go back to the person. But with the moment you get remote, you need to have a purchase guarantee. That is to me anyway, that is something that the global mobile wallets will not do for a long time, if ever, because they're focusing on what they're doing at the moment. And once they start looking at this at some point in the future, if they do it, they've got no idea the minefield they're walking into on it. It's a nightmare. So what is the goal? The goal will be to stop everyone moving all their accounts into Facebook or Alipay.
Right.
And the way you do that is by offering more before Facebook and Alipay turn up. You already offer more than they do. You can transact with anyone but more than just a funds transfer, because they already offer that and they offer something more. So there's every reason to switch to them unless you offer something more. You're not going to be safe if you just do funds transfers. It's that simple. You've got to do more than that. And that's where Visa and MasterCard come in as well, because they already do purchase guarantees. Though it's really the banks that actually provide that service, but they organize it.
And you're right. There is a lot of truth to that. I think the key is now going to be, because it's changing like anything else. And where's the world going? What is it going to look like?
Yeah.
How do we play in this after coronavirus changed a lot of the stuff? And what, actually, Biden's comment a couple of days ago reminded me something very interesting. He said America's on the move again. And I'm only talking about, forget the America part, just the move again. Now we're moving. And I go, moving is wonderful. We've taken the old systems where it took you 2 hours to get somewhere, and you get a car that now can go at 400 miles per hour. You can get there in 1 hour, and then you get even better car, and you'll be getting there in half hour. Wonderful. There's a little problem with that. What happens if that was not your destination? You're getting there faster, but you're getting faster to a wrong place. That's not where you're supposed to go. And the companies are not doing that. Corporate world is not doing that because they are automating. You hear the word cloud, obviously, because people didn't like to use the word outsourcing. And now we outsource, which means the skills were built somewhere else, right? Now we're dealing with a payment thing that people don't necessarily understand. And they don't, because it's a complex thing, as quite rightly you put it. We know that part. And so what has happened is they don't know how to. So everybody's coming into the game and saying, okay, I'll take that little piece. I'll take that. I think I can do this. And I'm saying, no, you're talking about technology. What problem are you solving?
Yeah.
What problem are you solving? Why don't you put the problem out there and tell me you can fix this problem and this is how you're going to fix it, right? So in payment world, you're absolutely right. We talk about money laundering, which I was going to name the country, but how about we say in the vicinity here, where this guy, the regulator, admitted that 90% of the transactions are getting through. Money laundering transactions are getting through. Not 9%, 90%. So what system have we got in place? If you can't stop it currently, just automating and doing some of the stuff is not going to stop it. And why is that happening? Because we are siloed. We are siloed. We don't understand the impact of this, because if you really look at it, in the old days when we had acquiring and issuing, bank was one. If you went to Barclays, issuing and acquiring. In Canada, same thing. Then we outsourced the acquiring part. A third party got involved, whether it's First Data or whoever it was. They said, we can process this, right? And we can make money in the middle. And so it became a big business. Now you've got the expertise not sitting at the banks, it's sitting somewhere else, right? They outsourced it further, pieces of it. On the issuing side, same thing has happened. So where do they make the money? On the interchange, some part, and the revolving credit, because half the people don't pay their bills on time. So we build a credit bubble, right? I may be a bank declaring profits like billions of dollars, but that's only on paper because I'm owed a lot of money. What happened with coronavirus? We haven't learned a lesson that, by the way, if people don't have the ability to pay, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, you only have to record the debt when you've accepted that it's not going to be repaid.
Correct. So they're not
until
declaring.
That point. Yeah.
Then you create pipeline, charge back, this, then the other, you throw here back, and so nobody sees the numbers. I've seen all that story too many times. So what happened is, how do you solve that? Now, to the debit part, the mobile payment is not about credit, it's about real money, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you take and make it digital, first of all, a currency of choice, US dollar, EU, euro, whatever, makes no difference. Nobody cares, because you can start dealing digitally. That power is gone, and it's coming. It's not a question of it's not coming. It is coming. So the question is, everybody's trying to play their thing and roll and saying, Okay, let's put a US stablecoin. Let's put this, then the other. Hello. Digital doesn't know boundaries. Technology does not know boundaries, right?
Yeah.
It does what it has to do. So I think,
and currency exchange happens instantaneously now.
you can pay people right on the spot, and you don't have to pay the 2% interchange and all that, the fees, like at least here in Canada through Interact was waived. The person who actually started Interact, and a good friend, I worked with a very smart guy, and he said to me, we made a mistake back then because they gave it away for nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they could see that the credit cards were charging all those big fees. Now, people are not stupid. They've seen this. There's a concept here. They can do this, right? Listen, at the end of the day, you do $1,000 transaction, $100,000 transaction, or a $1 transaction, the system cost is the same.
Yeah, it is.
That is, we've done it, so we know exactly. There's no issue.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the interchange related tied to the $2,000 you pay? That much you pay off the principal.
Well, it was originally because it was tied to the amount of credit that you were getting, and that was relevant.
Correct, but it changed, right? It changed, but the rules didn't change. The business continued. That's exactly what I'm saying. What you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, some of the young people may not realize that our currencies, which is what we're talking about, payments, were tied to gold reserve. But Nixon realized, I can't fund the Vietnam War, right? So he decoupled from that. It was him who did it. Decoupled from there, so that he could print money. Ever since that time, it's like any guy who gets drunk and he enjoys it and he's another one. We now have people operating like a drunk.
Well, that's why it was tied to gold in the first place, is to stop that from happening.
And now look at what China is doing. They've collected all the gold, and are they preparing to go down that path? Quite possibly, because otherwise, whether you look at Bitcoin or anything, it's all vaporware. Because where's the money? Show me the real money.
Show me something of actual real value. Underlying something. Yeah.
Correct. So the fiat currency, as we know it, is undergoing serious change, and that payment exchange digitally. I mean, if I was to turn on and say, by the way, you did this service for me, and I give you, whatever value. There's no physical currency, and you are now sitting on that credit, however it's represented, and you buy that from somebody else, and everybody's part of the system. We used to call it bartering.
Yeah.
So I use the term, we're going back to the future.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the reality, though, is that money was a great concept to expand the capabilities of bartering. It added on to bartering, so that you didn't have to, okay, I need a roof built on my house. I need to find all these people and give them enough stuff so that they will group together to build the roof. But how many eggs does that equate to? It's like, that's a real problem. That's where money came in. Right. But it only came in if there was a sustained value to that money. And that's why it was all attached to commodities. The pound sterling as well used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like these were all attached. There was an underlying commodity that the government said and the banks said, we actually have that metal in storage to replace. If you want the metal, we'll give it to you. In place of this note that we are guaranteeing it. And then they went, that's what the gold standard was. That's what the silver certificate note was. And then we left it.
So how do you now, given that, and some of the challenges we're talking about, we know regulators can't or will not interfere, or they can't, because it's now these guys have become so powerful that if they sue, right, say Facebook, for example, Facebook will lock them up in courts because they have the money to do it, as they've done in the EU, in Ireland, where they're fighting back the case, and they will spend as much money because they can make that money in one day, right? So $1 billion, but they don't want to pay the fine, so they're fighting it. Apple will fight the thing in EU. Already they made a statement right away that we don't agree with this, because they don't have to agree, because they control that thing. But what they are forgetting is when you can play that game, so can the others, right?
Yeah.
And they're starting to do that. You don't see one word coming out of China or one word coming out of the Asia Pacific region or Africans.
No,
They're
because
watching
they're
it.
already doing it.
They're doing it, and they're working with Africa. I mean, look at how short-sighted we are. And while this is nothing directly to do with payments, it just tells you how we think. You're talking about Tesla's talking about car electronic batteries to allow that to happen. Fantastic. Where is that raw material to make that come from? There are two places in the world.
So Democratic Republic of Congo is certainly one of them.
Absolutely correct. The other one is China.
Oh,
so
right. Okay.
Let's look at Congo, Africa. Who owns that mine? China. And they got so much influence and money in there that if they wanted to undermine this, they can do it very easily.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start sending warships everywhere and attacking people because they can do the same thing, can do it differently. That's not the answer.
The time of that is over now.
That time is over. So the
time of intimidating with warships is over.
Is definitely done. So the idea and the answer is what you did actually, which I strong believer in, is to collaborate. You get together and saying, this is the problem we've got. The countries get together. How do we help our citizens to navigate this thing? And people who are, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Google or Apple or whoever, have to behave themselves, right? And do the right thing for the right reason. So they become a utility of sorts, right? They want to make money. People have invested money. They say, oh, what the return? Well, that's another thing. We've got into the habit of put $1 and $1.10 next day. That mentality needs to change. But more importantly, so the regulators have to do something. The guys who can do something is the government, because they can change the rules. They were able to break up Bell Canada and Bell.
Yeah.
And AT&T and all these big companies were broken up by US government and other governments. It's time to break these guys up.
Yeah.
To turn around saying that you're not behaving yourself. This is what. But to do that, you need independence. Independence in Congress, independence in different parliaments. But if your election was funded by me, and I'm one of those guys, and that's exactly what is happening, then you're not going to vote against me. No. You're going to protect me, because if you don't, I'll make sure you're out of that office. That lobbying, that money in politics, when US changed the rules to call corporation an individual who could actually fund, right?
Yeah.
Was the most ridiculous thing.
That was shocking.
Shocking is putting it mildly.
I mean, why did it happen? Well, it happened because politicians in the United States anyway most of them are bought and paid for.
Correct. Yeah.
It would be nice to think that they are funded by companies they already agree with, but maybe not.
But that's and we got nothing against we all use, when WhatsApp came in, it was not owned by Facebook.
Well, Facebook paid a ridiculous amount of money for them, and everyone was saying, if I've got my story right, everyone was saying it's ridiculous, it's not worth that. Well, Facebook knew that it was, to them, based on their long-term business model.
Correct.
It was worth every penny, and it's starting to prove it now in Brazil.
Absolutely. And what they forgot, and you're right, that we can bank on the consumers or individuals who want everything for free and give them free communication. Oh, let them talk video chat. And they won't realize that WhatsApp is not the product. You and I are the product.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what happened. And they don't even realize because through algorithms, you can control the thinking so much. I got out of, well, I didn't cancel any account, but I deleted the things from here. And all the friends were calling me saying, why are you not on WhatsApp? I said, are you not following what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And they said, well, yeah, they already have my data.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the trouble is we can't go to regular people and say, stop using Facebook and WhatsApp because of what they're doing. Because they're going, look, I get a great service from them that I can't find anywhere else.
For free.
for free. And it's like, okay, that's not the approach. The approach is fine, but don't give them your money.
Correct. This requires
be
education.
aware, if you give them your money, then they now really control you. But you can't even just say don't do that. You have to give them a reason not to.
Right.
You get more value by leaving your money here or putting your money there. It's like we have to play the game the way it's being run right now, and we can't just go and say, oh, isn't it bad?
So
that's not going to achieve anything.
That's education.
Well, there's education, but it's like, oh, you can go to Facebook, but guess what? M-Pesa is giving purchase guarantees. Facebook doesn't. Oh, then I'm going to stay with M-Pesa then. Now M-Pesa can go out and advertise, hey, we're doing purchase guarantees now. And stick with us.
Correct. And
that's the way to do it.
Correct. Yeah. And the money staying in your country to use for your benefit to construct businesses, create economies. And
and so you're sticking with M-Pesa that's done so much for you up to this point. You want to stay anyway. You're looking for a reason to stay.
Correct.
So now there's a reason to stay.
They can't even control them because of the fact that servers can be moved in 2 seconds.
Right? Yeah. No one can
say, well, what money?
You can't control Facebook.
Which of these guys are paying taxes? Look at Amazon. We didn't talk about Amazon. But
Amazon is terrible as far as taxes. Amazon does have one aspect that allows them to be regulated, and that is their core business is product delivery, which means they have to have a physical presence in your country.
Correct.
Therefore, you can regulate them.
I'm only talking about Amazon.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of taxes, yes.
Yes. Facebook doesn't need any physical presence in your country to offer its services. How on earth are you going to regulate them?
That's exactly.
You can't. So that's the gist of like how scary these are.
That's correct. There's the fact that, and now are we seeing alliance? And I'm talking back to payments. Are we seeing an alliance of sorts between Google and Facebook?
Yes, you just mentioned that before we started this, and I'm going, oh, okay, that's not good. And you know what? That's not good for Google.
No, not good for Google, because they see Apple as the enemy. Apple already in Apple Pay and Apple Payments and all that. They know Facebook's got to, because here's the interesting thing. And the fact that the Indian government didn't stop this, because Reliance, Mr. Ambani and party, that Facebook invested money in the largest telecom, who have 400 million subscribers, right? Bigger than the population of the United States. They just put in that money. And guess what? Google was not so far behind buying into the same company. And I'm saying, oh, that's very interesting. How are two competitors actually doing this? And the answer is, no, they're not.
They're not competitors. I mean, the hope would be that because they're competitors, that means it will stay independent, but only so long as they stay as competitors.
But they have made side deals. What we're hearing in the news is that Google and Facebook may have a deal that, okay, as long as you don't touch this part of the business, we won't touch theirs.
If Google thinks that Facebook's going to stick to that, then they're crazy. Sorry.
But that's antitrust. That is antitrust. Right there, the basis of that fundamentally is antitrust, because you're colluding.
You're carving up industries now.
Correct. There's no room for a little guy to get in.
Yeah. Even if that was allowed, it's still not a good deal for Google, because Facebook will just ignore them when they're ready to.
Correct.
And do it anyway. And there's nothing Google will be able to do at that point except filing a lawsuit that will get judged 10 years later.
So
at which point it doesn't matter. Absolutely.
I'm wondering, Nick, because today we picked up this topic after a few months that we were doing regularly. So we went deliberately broadly, right?
Yes.
For a good reason, just to bring back the topic. So I'm thinking that we do next week, where we go in and actually examine what are the options available to regulators, right?
Yes.
Okay. What if those banks who are serious about this, right? What could they do? And there are options available if they are willing to do that. But that's going to mean they have to collaborate with other banks in other parts of the world, right?
Yes.
And
I think
this.
with few exceptions, it's going to be banks in developing countries that will be more likely to do something.
And they're starting
with a few exceptions.
Correct. They're starting to think like that. I have heard the CEO of this bank in South Africa, and there's people in Kenya. You can see the Vodafone is getting very active now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see Safaricom going all over Africa. So was Visa smart in making this deal with M-Pesa? I think they were very smart.
I think for both sides, that was a really good deal. Yes.
Very smart, because they can say, you know, hey, we'll give you this plate, we'll take you global.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to talk about that one.
Yeah,
actually.
no, we're going to tackle. So I'm writing.
Oh no, that's fine.
I'm making points that, so we'll look.
A lot has happened that we haven't talked about yet. That's a good
so
point.
what we're going to do, we're going to talk about banks, the regulators, and 2-3 will examine 2 parts, and we'll keep in more session, which is what can Visa do to be the good corporate citizen, because they have the network, global network, they have the capacity.
Do. And they have the integrity as well. They have the name, and MasterCard does as well.
Yeah,
it's like they have that name that is recognized and trusted. Both of them do.
Absolutely. And I want people to not misunderstand. We're not saying this to praise Visa or anything like that, because we come from that organization.
Yeah, we're both from Visa. So
yeah, but that's not the reason. The people who know me. I don't care who's on the other side. Yeah. Right is right and wrong is wrong. So we are going to examine what they can do, because they've done a lot of right things now, and give them credit. What Apple, which to be fair has done a lot of good things. So you can't knock Apple and say, whoop, they've done some silly things with this 30% charging of from developers for the Apple store for putting programs. That's not a smart move. But if Apple plays their cards right here, they could become that utility we're talking about. Facebook are in their world of their own, because what they think and do only they know. As to why Google has gone in that direction,
I don't know. That's a good question.
Very good question. I don't know to what extent they've gone. They only
have they done that because they've given up, or have they done that for a reason we don't know about?
I think to stop Facebook from competing with them in one area.
Yeah,
I see it, and therefore they're saying, okay, let's do that. Who knows? But the point is that we don't know what the heck is going on behind the doors, closed doors, and I think so. Google may have yet something up their sleeve. We don't know that. Facebook, in whatever they pretended to be, is not who they are. They're blatantly playing their game out there and for everybody to see. So it's blatant, which is kind of
they don't. It's like they don't care anymore.
Correct. When you get power, and they have the power, the money, they were able to influence elections and so forth. Like I heard, it was not news, and 4 different news in 4 different. You look at Al Jazeera, BBC, whatever, and the Indian television media. We're not going to cover that. The 400 TV station, independent guys do. That when on the Facebook, there was criticism of Modi a few days ago about how he's handling coronavirus. He gave them a warning, and they took it all out. Right. So Twitter took it out, and Facebook did. If that's what your ethics are, and you talk about free speech, it's pretty shameful that you use the words free speech and your actions is the same speech. And it's the same sentence. So question is, what are their ethics? Never mind what you're talking about.
Well, they know your information. They're now controlling what you see
and think.
And therefore they're pushing you in the direction of what to think.
Correct.
If they control what you can spend money on, the game's over.
Correct. It's the algorithms. It's the algorithm they're running. People are not sitting there. They've already got the thing, and he will neither admit to that nor change it.
Yes.
And so we have a serious problem on hand. How we're going to tackle this is a very, very good question.
It's very difficult.
It's difficult, but it can be done. And sometimes it's the difficult things that you have to tackle. The small things do take care of themselves.
Yes.
But if you tackle this type of things, you will, because I can't see how the third world countries, and as I said, I don't like to use the
developing world, I was told, is a good way of saying
yeah,
them, because they are now.
Or poor countries, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the technology and stuff, innovative stuff is coming from there.
It's amazing what's coming from what most people don't realize, in this country anyway, don't realize just how dynamic African countries are. They've been considered to be nothing's happening for such a long time. They don't realize the amazing things that are coming out of Africa, being developed there.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's stunning. I didn't until I started looking, because it's not told. We're not told.
We were back. We were back a couple of years ago on vacation to, where I was born, obviously Kenya, and that's again not the reason for talking about M-Pesa, but I look at all that and go, hang on, I saw stuff and the things that they're doing. The entire country is using M-Pesa to transact business.
Yeah.
I went into a restaurant, right, which is a beach we used to go as a little kid, right? People who know it, those from Africa or Kenya would know Bamburi, and just north is a beautiful beach. So we're up there at the beautiful restaurant, and I said to the guy, "Can you bring your menu?" Right? And he said, "It's on your table." He said, "You got a mobile phone?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's on your table." There was a barcode, the QR code. I did this. The entire menu was here, right? So this, you're talking about Kenya. They have done some phenomenal stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And so what happened was, I looked at it and I said, "Okay." He said, "Oh, you can just
order on your phone."
Yeah, I did it right there. And he's looking and saying, "Okay, you want this, then the other. Okay, can I make it spicy? Because I'd forgotten to put." He said, yeah. So, and the thing was here, and I'm looking at it and saying, "You go to a restaurant, you're knocking, hello, excuse me, I've been waiting here for 15 minutes. Well, guess what? We didn't have to. He said, "By the way, you've not been to this restaurant for a while or something." I said, "No, I've not." So he said, "You didn't have to wait. You could have done this. Your food would already be here." And I'm saying, okay. When we went there again, we didn't have to wait at all. Bum, 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 bum. And the thing was, we want this grilled lobster. We want that. We want this.
And I'm guessing that is not just one restaurant. That's everywhere.
That's good. This is M-Pesa.
Why isn't that here? Why isn't that in supposedly the most developed country in the world that's leading in technology? And it's just not here.
I think we believe we are leading in technology.
Yes, we have dropped the ball and we don't know it yet.
Big difference between what we believe and what the reality is.
Yeah.
Right? And can we get back there? We can if we do the right things and be one of the players and have some influence. But this business that we're back at the table and all any other, sorry, it doesn't work for me. Your actions speak louder than the words. And I think what we need to do. So the part that we talk about now, the banks, the regulators, the how the collaboration would work, and Visa's role, we're going to cover hopefully next Friday, right?
Yes.
But I think it's fantastic. We deliberately made it in case somebody's wondering, "Oh, this is very generic and high level." Yes, it was, because of the fact that we left the subject for a few months, lie down there. Now we pick it up and we're going to go, because we think this topic is very serious. You can't uncouple the payments from things we do every day.
Everything is connected. And it's the payments that is what connects them.
Correct.
More than anything else. Payments is what connects them. Even if a transaction costs nothing, it's still a transaction.
Correct. And the sooner the big businesses and the government realize that, right? That it's not. There's another topic you saw I covered, and we're going to cover again this afternoon.
Yes.
About why the politicians are so poor in decision making, right?
And this is something I wanted to say, is that there are a lot of people out there that say the right things and talk about doing things. There are surprisingly well, I'm a techie, so we're all about building things, but there are not that many people that actually go out there and build stuff. That you and I are two people that do. We want to build systems. we're looking, we see something that needs to be built, we want to build it. We're not going to talk about it.
No.
I mean, we will, but the goal is to build it, make
Correct.
it happen. That's where we come from.
And for them, not for us to address the needs of the stakeholders.
If we address the needs of the stakeholders, then we're going to be fine, because it'll work, it'll be used, people will want to use it, and we'll be fine by focusing on the right people.
I think, Nick, you've done a fabulous job of parking all the key areas.
Yeah.
Now we drill down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next Friday, because we can take this 3 and really zero in.
Yeah.
And saying, well, these are the issues, right?
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. That has been fantastic. So I hope you got your vaccine, and you did, right?
No, I'm low risk, and I would rather someone in another country have mine. I will come along later. I'm an introvert. I keep to myself, and so I'm low risk. So I'm in no rush. I'll do it when everyone else has had them.
Well, fantastic. So for today, thank you very much for another very interesting discussion, and we're going to drill down so that people get real value from this. And by the way, if you guys want us to tackle any topic that you want, this is what BIZTEC is all about. And I look forward to doing this next Friday. Nick, thank you very much for doing it. And you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Bashir.
All the
and
very
thank
best.
you, everyone. Yes.
Yeah.